Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Property Hustler Show. My name is Andrew, and today Ping and I are going to discuss why social media is so important in 2024. All right, Ping, let's talk social media. Very quickly, let's identify who would be considering social media and who would not. There's people who love social media, people who hate it, some people are doom scrolling on it, and other people will look at social media as a tool. We've obviously been developing our social media presence for a few years now, and I know we've talked about this before. One of the biggest regrets we have is not having started it earlier. So, for anybody who's considering building their social media presence, let's talk about some of the challenges that they might have when it comes to building themselves out.
Okay, I think it's so mental, right? There's a mental blockage about like social media, right? For anybody who's considering doing it. But if you put a company or the business growth as your primary goal,
Hmm.
and you look at exactly what your competitors are doing, if they're doing social media and you're not, are you losing some opportunities? I would say yes. And for that
course.
reason, you should get over your feelings, try to get out there because using a social media as a tool will allow you to start building the trust, credibility for your customers from the get-go.
Like, I think it's important to establish, if you just like social media to scroll and like look at other people, it's probably not the healthiest habit for you, right? I think everybody understands that if you do that in excess. But if we're talking about getting over yourself and the emotional aspect of it, the mental aspect of it, what is it that people feel comfortable posting and what is it that people feel uncomfortable posting? Like, people feel comfortable posting food pictures, pictures of them with their family, when you go out and do something, like things that seem like genuinely okay, this seems relatively in the field of norm to post this.
Right.
But if you start posting about yourself and your work and what you're doing, people start to feel like, well, maybe I should keep a business page.
Yeah.
But people don't connect with businesses as much as they connect with people. So you have to start being comfortable or trying to figure out a way to get comfortable sharing what it is that you're doing with an audience that also wants to follow that journey.
That is the point, by the way. Social media is about like making yourself as a content, not try to create content. At least that is my understanding in 2024. Like creating content, honestly, is a lot of work, and that's why people are sitting on the camera thinking about what they need to say
Mhm.
and all that stuff. I still have that problem. Like every time I need to produce a content, I'm like, it's very tiring. But the moment that we're just kind of documenting a conversation, a journey, right? When we go on a job site, we film like some B rolls, right? Just take out our phone, start filming it, kind of use it as a documenting our own experience. All of a sudden, it becomes very easy.
Yeah. People end up getting a little bit fixed on whatever it is that they set out to do, needing to be perfect. Perfection in social media is very dangerous. You're never going to hit it for one. There's always going to be something wrong. And the amount of time that you put into thinking about this is probably going to be faster for you to just wing it. And you see this all the time where some people will make these videos that go totally viral and it's obvious that they didn't put any thought into it. Right? They just kind of did it. Right? And that's the genuine authentic stuff that oftentimes picks up and blows up.
Yeah,
Right? And you have to figure out what part of you, which there's always going to be a part of you, is something that people will want to follow,
for sure.
right?
And by the way, the I think being intentional on social media is really important. But we're talking about like just for anybody who's starting a social media journey, right? Kind of like what we did. We started with trying to like do some intentional content. It was hard. It was the friction is extremely high.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, until we recognize that, you know what, let's just figure out how to document exactly what we do on a daily basis. For example, if we have a flips, if we have a rental property that we need to do a tenancy turnover, if we have eviction, let's start recording what we're seeing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like content creation becomes a lot easier. And I feel like this is where everybody should start in the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Where you don't want to have to always be manufacturing content, where as much as you are just documenting what you're already doing. You have to have a synergy between what you're doing and what you're not. And this is where people who are not actually doing whatever they're trying to show that they're doing end up struggling a lot with is that, they're never really out there. I see a lot of social media people, especially in real estate, because that's what we're in and that's what we follow. There's a lot of people that are out there and they're only speaking from like either a studio or their home office setup, and that's all they're able to do because they're not actually out there doing what they're saying they're doing.
Right.
And that always gives me a little bit of skepticism. It's not that everybody's going to be like that, but they're not necessarily walking their talk.
That is part of the problem with social media, right? A lot of people are trying to flex,
Yeah.
right? And it worked before, I believe, but I don't think that's what the audience are looking for right now.
Yeah. No,
Right?
it's not.
People want to follow the journey.
People are looking for a degree of authenticity. But let's talk about now an individual's problem when it comes to bridging themselves into social media. And I know that one of the ones that everybody gets stuck up on is imposter syndrome.
If you're just sharing about what you're interested in, sharing about like what you're actually doing, I don't think you need to worry too much about that. For example, like we talk about, sometimes when we're in the job site, right? As in like in our own project and we're doing certain things, right? We kind of just look at it. You did a series of things for renovation, right?
Mhm.
And then you said, hey, come in the word flip, right? If you want to learn a little bit more, right? The entire filming session really isn't trying to find items or trying to find something to talk about. You're kind of just going around the property and say, oh, this is what I did, right? And then we kind of do the call to action at the end. That was it, right? It
Yeah.
was so simple. Like within 2 hours, I think you produce like 15, 20 pieces of content,
Yeah.
right? And then that is how it's supposed to be. You batch the content a little bit if you don't have a lot of time, right? But it's really beneficial for the company, for the business, or even personal branding because it demonstrated that you're actually doing stuff out there.
Yeah. It's true, and I feel like there's always going to be a disconnect between what you know and then what you think other people know. Because what might be intuitive to you and you think is awfully basic is not going to be basic for a lot of people. And there's going to be some people who are just like, oh yeah, this is way too basic. I remember I was talking to some people talking about construction materials. I was explaining about the spacing for the 2x4s, and then one guy's just like, that's extremely standard. What are you going to talk to people about next? How to swing a hammer? Just like, that's a good idea. Some
Yeah,
people don't know how to swing a hammer,
yeah. Thanks for the
right?
engagement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? And it depends. So you're not gonna appease everybody, and then if you haven't had anybody, like, crap on you before, we're just gonna go and say, "Hey, you suck," it's a little disheartening.
Right.
And then also if you're looking at it and you're posting as if though you are somebody and your video only gets, like, a couple hundred views on, like on a reel, or if you post a YouTube video, like, 100 views, it's
Hmm.
a little disheartening.
For
It's
sure.
demoralizing.
Yeah.
It's borderline embarrassing. It can be embarrassing, especially if you put effort into it. The worst is when you put effort into it, and then your video gets no views, and then you're just like, "Oh, I suck."
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I got a lot of videos with 200 views only.
Yeah, but you know what the truth is? The truth is that virality is overrated.
Hmm.
100% it's overrated. And the thing is that if you have something that you are genuinely selling, whether it's a service or whether you have a practice or whether you're doing something and you have something that is worth anything, virality is not necessary. If you affect one person, chances are if you have a real business, that business that from that one person that saw your video that's interested will cover the expense or make the whole thing worth it,
Yeah.
right? 100 people, 100 views on a video is not a lot. 100 people in the room is a lot.
That's actually one thing that I think we learned back then when we are trying to like get into social media, right? We're getting a little defeated with just a couple hundred views, but then we started putting into perspective. That's like 200 people in the room listening to that piece of information or advice,
Yeah.
right? And as long as one person can take that and then implement it, that itself is already good.
Dude, I remember one of our early videos, right? Not getting very many views. It was a crappy video. I remember I was feeling very demoralized, but then that one guy came along and wanted to partner with us on a project and put forth $150,000.
Hmm. Yeah,
That is crazy,
yeah.
right? Just from a video. Like we didn't know each other. We connected from it and then we got to know each other and we hit it off. That's great, right? But the truth is that opportunity would not have been there had we not posted that video.
Oh,
And it wasn't a good
100%.
quality video. It wasn't it wasn't well done by any means, and it was embarrassing to post,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
But it definitely was effective.
No, that's why top of funnel is really important, right? And the moment that we're not pushing, like putting ourselves out there, right? Nobody knows about us,
Yeah.
right? And if you're running any sort of service products or whatever, right? You can do a lot of things behind the scene, but at the same time, people need to at least know what you're doing. You're not doing what's the right word? A disservice?
Yeah, you're not doing anybody a disservice by
Yeah,
putting out the video.
by hiding yourself behind it, right?
Yeah.
You need to like show people what you got because if you believe in your product and service, guess what? Like more people can benefit from whatever you're offering right now.
Yeah. You should always be focusing on you. Work on you and you will attract people. Now if you film yourself working on yourself, it's very much like guys who go to the gym and film themselves working out. It's attractive. People
Yeah,
look at that stuff and say, "Oh wow, that's pretty impressive." You're working on yourself. If you're working on yourself on your business, people also find that attractive. People respect people who are bettering themselves.
100%.
So you should always be doing that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, I know it's very easy for us to get a little bit high level, like when we start talking about funnels and we start talking about using social media as a tool. I think where people need to not get stuck on, or what people need to not get stuck on, is content creation or filming content and then posting it, and then also being able to say things concisely and be to the point,
Right.
right? So, how can somebody just jump in and do something like that quickly?
That's a really good question. Based on our experience, what we did is that we hire out almost immediately. We know that we don't want to get involved
Yeah,
into
we're
this.
those kind of people. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of treat it like a business unit, right? So when we need to film, we didn't think about filming it ourselves. We had Logan,
Yeah.
right? We started looking for people, and then Logan showed up, and Logan started filming, giving us some ideas, right? File management was a big thing, and then he did that. He made some suggestion. We started building our studio, and then after that was the social media management, the posting by ourselves. You never post anything by yourself.
No,
At least
I'm horrible with
I
that.
know. At least I post a few, and it was terrible. So we end up delegating out to other people. But it's also because our time is so limited,
Yeah.
right? With the business that we're operating. But here's the thing, though: if you're just kind of doing it, kind of based on your personal interest, right? You will have to kind of do that yourself because there's no budget. But if you're running a business, I think it's a necessary investment to put yourself out there. Because here's the thing: the moment that people started knowing your brand or your service, right, and they click into your page, if nothing's there, it actually shows that you're not being very authentic. You're just running pay ads.
Yeah.
That's why organic content right now is actually getting more and more important, right? Before you even think about the paid approach, pay advertising approach.
Yeah. And actually, I feel like we should talk about this since you mentioned cost a little bit. It is exponentially more cost effective if you can just get comfortable with putting up the camera and filming like this.
Oh yeah,
And honestly, just
100%.
buy like a small rig where you have a little bit of a front facing light. It doesn't take a lot. Like, just watch a couple of YouTube videos on how to make yourself look good and make sure to focus on audio quality. Because if the video is not that great, the audio has to be good. And just film yourself talking about a couple of things. Try to find a point that resonates well with you that you want to share with others. And if you can get better at driving that point home, people will start to recognize you. And if you're a business leader, it's I think the hardest thing, at least this was the hardest thing for me, because when people would judge the fact that when we started real estate, they're just like, how did you get to the point that you are without social media? It's because we share the mentality that one, social media is a bit of a waste of time, and making money in business and in real estate should be a quiet thing. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be a loud thing. And it's easy to look down on all these guys who are just like, I got this Lamborghini, look at me, and this is how I made all this money so quickly. Like, man, hate it. I don't
Yeah,
want to be that.
right.
But now all these people are buying from this fraud,
Yeah,
right? Let's be real. And Roman says this all the time is just that, like, listen, we got to put ourselves out there so that we can save people from fake gurus
right.
and put them into a network of people who are actually doing what they're saying. But the problem is that people who are doing this stuff, a lot of them, there's a lot of resistance to getting on social media because they have a real business. They
Yeah.
don't need to have a social media business. They've got a real business, like
Yeah, but
tangible.
their real business also needs some sort of advertising somewhere,
Exactly.
right? It's just that they're not promoting themselves. In real estate, it's kind of important that you promote yourself a little bit,
Hmm.
sell yourself a little bit. And the reason why I say that is because people don't invest in the product. People invest in the investor, the active investor.
Exactly.
And that's why there's no other way for you to grow and scale this business without putting some thoughts into social media. Because if all of your competitors are doing that, right, you're getting outcompeted, right?
Yeah.
Stop winging it.
That's where I think that there's two lines of thought. There's solopreneurs, and then there's business entrepreneurs, and then there's people who are running like a proper enterprise, right? And I feel like if you can allot a budget to social media, then you have a little more options, right? Like you can hire an actor, you can pay for advertising. It's like sure, that's fine. But if you are the face, and if you are the brand, which in most cases for a lot of people you are the brand,
Yeah.
you can't outsource that part, and people will want to connect with who you are and your value system and your principles and why you're doing what you're doing, and that's what people are going to resonate with. So you have to make sure to gather that human element. People sometimes get very corporate, and then they sound like ads. When they film a video like this, they're just like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And it's like nobody wants to listen to that, right? But if
Yeah.
you start saying authentic, being authentic, and talking about this is why I'm doing this, or here's what I'm doing, people are a little bit more inclined to see like what it is because you look like a person.
Yeah, exactly. Start with that first. And then if you want to start adding more like a technical stuff, like a hook, a proper hook, structure the video and do a call to action afterwards. Yeah, do that after. But people think about like you mentioned, perfection
Hmm.
from the very beginning. And people started putting their own personal preference into that final product before they even start filming.
Yeah.
That's why it created a lot of like mental friction.
And they don't even know what they're doing. So they're
Exactly.
putting in all this thought into what it is that they want to create, not knowing how to do it, and then they act like they know how to do it because it has to be perfect. They think they know what they need to do in order to achieve a standard.
Yeah.
Like the thing I see most people do, and this is always wrong. It's wrong in business and it's wrong in social media development, right? Is that they go out and they buy all the tools and all the equipment first, and then they start filming. When really you want to start filming with what you got. I know those guys who want to start a tiling business. They went out, they paid for a designer to create a logo, they got shirts printed, they leased a van, they bought all the tools, and then they started advertising for sales, for business. And I'm like, you did it completely
Yeah,
backwards.
yeah. Get
You
a
should
sales
yeah,
first.
get a sales first,
Yeah.
rent the tools, and then when you
Mhm.
make a profit, buy all the other things and then start building it up. But
Exactly.
sales come first, right?
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
cheapest and most affordable thing to start with is yourself.
Yeah.
Film yourself, put yourself out there. Don't go buy all the expensive cameras, all the expensive lighting, rent or set up a studio, create your logo, create your website. Man, see if you're even like meant for this. You might go in and be all like, this rots my soul to put myself on the camera and say these things. Then
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not for you.
Do this first. It's
Yeah,
right here. Everything's like all in one,
exactly.
right? Just film yourself, get comfortable with it, do one piece of content a day, right? And I'm not even talking about reel. I'm talking about just one story.
Yeah.
Film yourself what you're doing, give out a
Oh,
message.
but you touched on one thing that I think is very important. Okay, so if I had to do everything different again, because we started off with YouTube,
Yeah.
long form videos,
Yeah.
and that was challenging.
Oh,
I
so hard.
remember we bought like expensive cameras. Like, okay, here's the
Yeah.
thing: we had an actual business, right? We
Yeah.
weren't starting off with nothing. We weren't starting as people who were going from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay, so we bought cameras. We built a studio in the back of our office.
Yeah.
Right. We hired a videographer. I remember I couldn't justify buying a teleprompter, but I built a teleprompter,
Yes.
right? Which, by the way, if anybody wants to know how we built a teleprompter, comment that I want to know how to build a teleprompter because it's very useful and it's very easy to build. I'll make a video on how we do that. It's very cool.
Yeah.
But it's very helpful when you don't know what you're saying. And the thing is that if you don't know what you're saying, a teleprompter is helpful for some people because then you don't have to focus on what you're saying because you wrote it out, and you can focus on more on how you emote, how you express. Because if you can express emotion through video and camera, you're going to resonate more with your audience.
Exactly, exactly. And here's the thing: if we were to start this over again, because obviously we did it backward. Okay.
We did it backwards too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a budget, and that's what we spent it, and then we realized that we really didn't know what we're doing until now. But
Yeah.
pretty much like 1 year later, we're like, okay, finally we kind of get a hang of it. Still, there's still a lot to learn. Social media is always changing. But if we were to start it over again, here's what I would do. Just a very simple few different steps for people to follow. Number one, get comfortable with the camera, start filming yourself, have a conversation with the camera, right? Assuming this is a person, right? How you would say things to your friend. Start with that.
Mhm.
And then learn how to post on story every single day. Once you get comfortable with that, maybe you can download a CapCut, editing a little bit, right? Put a caption. The truth is, even like Instagram, TikTok itself has a lot of like function that you can use.
Yeah.
And just start putting yourself out there. Start with that, and then based on the engagement, based on the following and the questions that people are asking you, start DMing them.
Yeah.
If you have something that you can offer to them, right? Doesn't matter if it's a product, service, coaching, or anything, right? Start getting used to using this as a tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than consuming it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. People start getting very sophisticated with tips and tricks about the angle that they should take in social media. And the truth is that you don't have to get so creative with it. You can just follow a few basic things. Like these apps are meant for kids, right? These
Yeah.
tools are meant to be used by kids. You as an adult, if you can't use this because you're overthinking it, right? There's no excuse. Which, by the way, I know I didn't complete the thought earlier when I said if we had to do it over again, I wouldn't have started with YouTube long form content. I would have started with Instagram or short form reels because
For
that
sure.
content just algorithmically that stuff just gets pushed out to everybody and the algorithm is going to test to see what your audience is and if your audience is resonating with it. And if it's not, it tanks it. That's fine. But YouTube videos, if you don't know how to make viral titles, viral thumbnails, and leverage the browse feature and do all these other things, your video isn't going to do too well. So when you're getting started, you just want to get like audience feel and see what people are resonating with. The easiest, most affordable videos to put out are reels on
Mhm.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. While we're on the topic of equipment and money people spend on getting things started, let's break things down into just a couple of categories of people. You got the person who's just wants to start with the camera, record themselves, use their iPhone or Android, whatever it is, maybe invest in a mic, like a lav mic, so you can attach it to yourself to improve the audio quality. That'll be good enough. You're gonna spend an extra $100 on some audio equipment and you're good. And then you have somebody who's like maybe a tier more professional. You're gonna get some kind of a professional grade camera, right? You don't have to spend well over $1,000 for around the $1,000 price range or sub that. Even go on Facebook Marketplace, you can pick up a decent camera. Now, for those listening, we use mirrorless cameras. We don't go for the DSLR. People think that they need DSLR cameras because that's like the term, but those are very versatile cameras. You can get specific cameras that are tailored for people who are YouTubers, social media people. There's lots of brands that are creating product for that, and you can definitely look into something like that. The most expensive thing, just so everybody knows, is actually going to be the lens. Okay, and I hate getting overly technical with this stuff,
Man,
but
I can't even talk about this because you took care of all of that
no,
stuff.
I know.
Yeah,
So that's the thing. 24 millimeter is a sweet spot of a lens, right? You just want to
Okay.
get that. It's good for you can technically hold it far if you want to self vlog or just keep it at a reasonable distance. Sometimes you get the big lens, you have to set it up too far away from where you are. But a 24 millimeter is like a desk lens. You can keep it about arm's length away, and it'll frame you. And you can film it. It makes you look pretty good. The main reason why you need a good lens is because if you're filming in low light setting, it's important. Now, for people who are in real estate, how many times do you want to go in and film a house and it's like low light setting? This is where you want to watch a few YouTube videos that talk on f-stop. I don't want to get into too much details. All I want you to know here is that if you want to do that kind of filming, use your phone when possible. If you need a camera, get a like $700. We use the Sony A6 series. That's good enough. And then
Nice.
get a decent lens. Spend another $700-800 on a lens. You're good. But now you're at $1,500. You can get it on Marketplace for around 1,000.
So how much do we spend on
Oh,
our
dude.
equipment?
Okay, this camera here, we're actually using the Sony ZV-E1. It is let's just call it social media camera geared for video, okay? And that camera is about like $3,500. Okay, that's one camera. And then they have the A6,
Crazy.
and that's like that one's about $1,200.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
and then the
Okay.
lenses on each one is about $1,200 a piece.
Okay.
Right? So it ends up becoming like a little bit more expensive. But the thing about these ones is that what you're paying for, what we're paying for, is intuitive, easy function. We're paying for things to be
Convenience.
easy to use. Yeah, it has a lot of automation features.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't have to worry about settings and like focusing. You want the autofocus to be good. And on top of that, the ZVE1, I should do a review on this camera. The
Seriously.
ZVE1, it also can act as a webcam. So you can just plug it in. You got like crisp webcam quality. That's why my webcam looks so good.
Okay, awesome. Sounds like you're a salesperson for the camera.
Well,
But
you need to get these things set up. And then there's other people who want a studio and they're going to set up a home studio. Now you're getting into lighting, right? And it's like now it starts to get too complicated. And then this is what scares people away from it. So people who are getting started, who don't need all these things, they go and get all those things. When they
right,
don't know how to use them, how do you use lights? How do you set them up? Can you just set up a regular lamp? What is all this for? Do you need a neon sign?
no,
You don't need any of that.
no.
You don't need any of that. Right? We're just extra.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here's how I will start it all over again. Okay, well I can't talk about that, but here's the thing. I will use that camera. I will use my iPhone. I'll just put up a camera and then make sure the audio is good. Right. Start with that. Make sure I can generate some sales. Once I have the sales, I will actually start a podcast. Right. The reason why I would do that was because we found out that the amount of a network and the knowledge that we're getting from a podcast is actually extremely valuable. Right. Because we're providing a platform where people can kind of come on it. We help them like basically promote them. Right. So we're offering some sort of value, and in return we get 1 to 2 hours of their time, right? Based on
Yeah.
whatever we need to discuss. And oftentimes we ask what we need to know,
Yes.
right? And just depends on how the conversation flows. But the biggest benefits of doing that is really that you end up forcing yourself to learn every single week,
Yes.
right? And that's where we try to really maximize our value of all the equipment in here. Because number one, whatever we do, there's gonna be a lot of clips that we can do. It makes the content production very, very easy. And number
Yes.
two, at the same time we're learning something. And then on top of that, there's a relationship build, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of like, well, Alex Kamosi, one input needs to equal to multiple different outputs. There's a leverage in doing this,
Yes.
right? So, but yeah, it's good that you're looking into all the costs and
Well,
all that.
the truth
Because
is, like, it has been a lot easier since there's two of us because we're each able to cover like, different aspects. To be honest, the aspects that you cover, I don't need to look into, and vice versa, right?
yeah,
I know that sometimes when we talk about it, and depending on the issues that people face, is like there's a lot of ground level things that people get caught on. People always get caught on the details, and they drive people nuts. Right?
yeah,
Like you're talking about bringing on a guest, but somebody who's just starting out is going to think, well, why would anybody want to come onto my podcast when I'm first starting it out?
mm-hmm,
Well, the easiest way to start your own podcast is really get yourself your own equipment and you start talking and sharing your insights. The best and easiest thing to share your insights on is trending news. Like I can get on coaching calls with people and talk to them about like keywords, SEO, and how to follow trends. Google Trends is your friend because you can find breaking news. And the thing about breaking news is that when it starts trending, somebody reads the news. Like whatever. Let's just talk about it right now. In a minute, like Trudeau starts talking about new incentives or new things with the federal budget that he's putting into place. If you start talking about that stuff, other people who have already watched other relevant stuff will also be fed your content.
oh, I see,
And if you do what you said about the podcast, just for the listeners, the podcast method that we're talking about, where you film your main long form video podcast, that is going to be one video. But from that, you're able to use the Mothership method, which is the main podcast. Now it can be chopped up into smaller individual clips. So from making one video, you can now get VAs to make smaller clips for short form content that will allow you to experiment with what type of things you say appeals to your audience, right? So it's the most affordable way to create volume content.
amazing,
Just break it down all like that, right?
amazing.
And you can dive deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole of social media production, and then you can get into what type of content. Another thing that I want to share with the audience that I think is very valuable that we learned was how to assess your content. And what did we learn? We learned the bear and the cup method. Do you remember that?
Remind me again.
The bear and the cup method of assessing your content. Okay.
Okay,
So the bear and the cup method. Okay. So if your videos are bad, your videos probably fall into the cub framework, the cub assessment. What is a cub? CUB. Your content is probably confusing, which is C. U is for unbelievable, and B is for boring. If your content's not doing well, it probably falls into that three category. Now, if you want to create the opposite of that content, and what's the opposite of a cub? The opposite of a cub is a bear. Then you have that your content is going to be B for believable, E for energetic, and then A for authoritative, and then R is for the hardest one, relatable.
yeah, relatable is very hard.
Relatable is the hardest one.
Yeah,
That's why it's last. But if you can start to create your content around that framework and you believe that your content is all those four things, believable, energetic, authoritative, and relatable, you will have content that performs.
yeah.
And it's like that across all platforms. Now, it's easier to say it when you put it into an acronym, but it's a lot harder to implement that. And there is going to be a combination of what you say in practice, like what we say right now. And then it's also going to be a combination of editing it into something that is capturing the attention of your audience.
Yeah.
You have to put it all together.
You know what's interesting? This part is super valuable if there's any audience listening up until this point, but at the same time, it's not very relatable to a lot of people who are just starting out. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
exactly. But the thing is that people also want bite-sized pieces of information. Like the bear in the
mhm,
cup method is something that people find it easy to digest and understand. It's like, well, when you say it like that, of course it makes sense, but how do you implement it? And this is what we sometimes help people with is the implementation of such a framework, right? Because now, okay, how do I make myself all those four things? And then there's also that disconnect because a lot of it, people have a lot of information in their minds, but they often overcomplicate it. And really, you have to be simplifying it. They say simplify it so that a 5 or 6 year old can understand it, or what is it, a fifth grade reading level?
mhm.
Simplify it to that point. And if you can do that so that anybody can understand, you've got good content.
Another thing is that let's talk about pay ads versus, the organic approach, right?
Mhm.
Because we just talked about the organic approach, how to leverage the social media as a tool.
Why would somebody consider doing paid ads? And at what points would somebody consider
Okay,
doing
so
paid
here's the
ads?
thing: if you don't have, the energy or even the a way to produce organic content, right, in the very beginning, pay ads is kind of like borrowing the attention, right? So you make one piece of content, you can stop. Again, pay ads requires a lot of testing, but at least like once you produce one or couple different type of videos, you can use the pay ads to push this piece of content out. Once you push that out, you start drawing the attention right away. And
Mhm.
if you have the right hook and call to action and proven that this video is working, all of a sudden you are going to start getting a lot more engagement, right? Not a lot of people can do the PS right in the very beginning, and that's why our recommendation is to always start with the organic first, right?
Yeah.
And see what kind of feedback that you're getting from your current audience first, right? And once you do that, then maybe for those who are performing well, you can maybe turn that into a pay ads and then see how that works,
Yeah.
right? But it's all about pay ads. The downside about doing pay ads is that once you stop, your business stops. Organic approach is that like even for a period of time where we didn't actually post or produce any other content, some of the videos that we have on YouTube channel is still being searched,
Mm.
right? And that generates different type of traffic. So there has to be a balance. Before I think can get away with not doing any organic, right? You can focus on pay ads because there's not a lot of people producing content, valuable content. So whatever you do, once they catch the attention, you can draw that business. But in 2024, the biggest issue that I'm seeing is some people who do that, if you drive the content over to a Instagram page or Facebook or that's a YouTube channel, if you don't have any other content that you push out there, you end up losing that trust. Because now this person is like just running the pay ads. It becomes a funnel only.
And that's the thing about what we have found when it comes to funnels. It doesn't matter what you're selling, whether you're selling like real estate education, you might be selling property management services, wholesaling, you can be selling house flipping, you can sell it on contracting services. It doesn't matter what you're selling. If you're advertising and people want to verify that credibility, they're going to check your personal socials. And if your personal socials don't line up at all, it's going to make your advertisements less effective.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that you need to work on. You
Hmm.
can pay to play, but when you pay to play, you have to continue paying to play.
For sure. For sure.